After college, I did the requisite backpacking around Europe, and I went to the Van Gogh Museum where I fell in love with his collection of Japanese woodblock prints, ukiyo-e. And I decided that I was going to build on my art career by doing paintings and writing poetry using Japanese calligraphy. Visions of grandeur for sure. When I returned to New York, I met a Japanese lady who taught me Japanese calligraphy, and then she asked me after a year, would you like to go to Japan, live with a family, teach English, and study art? And I said, sure, that sounds great. Flew to Japan, and I met Kosaka sensei, a wonderful grandfatherly figure, very cute and very traditional, who was going to teach me brush painting, sumie. I want to preface this by saying that when I studied art in the US, it was really about be yourself, be expressive, be an individual, and so on. Now, some art teachers, of course, want certain form and shading and structure, but in general, in US, we are loath to quash somebody's creativity and the next budding genius. Japan, very traditional. Kosaka sensei said to me, this is how you hold the brush. This is where you put the water. This is where you put the ink. This is where the rock goes. This is where the tree goes, and so on. Get the picture? In addition, he would give me this sheet to practice. I'd go home. I would then bring it back the following week, and he would make the corrections in heavy ink on a brush all over it. At the end of each session, his wife would trudge up the stairs with a tray, coffee or tea, and a dessert. I was macrobiotic at the time, and I said, I don't eat sweets, and she would say, this is not sweet, amakanai desu yo, to a piece of strawberry shortcake, and I wondered, how could she possibly say that is not sweet? I was in a cross-cultural bind. I knew enough to know that in Japan it's rude to refuse when somebody gives you something. At the same time, coming from an American background where we have a long checklist of possible allergies somebody would have, that we would never offer something without first asking them. This went on week after week after week, and after 6 months, my pent-up anger and frustration was too much. I couldn't stand it anymore, and I stopped and I said, Beth, why are you so angry? And I started to explore what was going on underneath. I wanted to bracket my anger, put it on the side, and take that energy and channel it into curiosity. I wanted to know, was I feeling threatened, my identity as an artist? Was it that I was on overload for all the different cross-cultural stimuli I couldn't deal with? And eventually I explored and explored and explored, and I learned more and more about myself, how I deal with change, how I learn, and it influenced me enough that I shifted my career and I went into the fields of intercultural communication and conflict resolution. What does this have to do with Bushwick? Bushwick is an urban setting with a changing demographic, more and more diversity in the neighborhood. Right now, more than 50% of the world's population live in cities. UN Habitat predicts that by the year 2050, more than 70% are going to live in cities. So this trend is only going to continue, not decline. It's important for the citizens and community members of Bushwick to get together and say, what is it that we want in our community? What's important to us? What traditions from the past we want to keep? What do we want to bring in that's new? How do we create this strong foundation to grow and build a community that we all want to live in? I'd like to offer 4 communication practices that may help in this process. The first is to identify what is really important to us, to know the values and the influence that shape how we see the world, how we think, and how we understand others across difference. The second is, how valuable is this particular relationship? I would imagine that the neighbors and community members around us are important relationships they want to explore. Our brains are very busy here. The brainstem and the limbic system are working overtime with impulse reactions to keep us safe. The cortex slows down the process so we can reflect and think and be more intentional in the behaviors we choose. The third practice is really checking assumptions. As humans, we all have them. We know that we want to be able to be safe, and so our assumptions about what's safe or what's not kick in. The challenge is not just stopping there, but exploring what these assumptions are based on and whether they're useful to us or not. Here is where we want to do deep breathing and kick in our parasympathetic nervous system, again, to slow down the process. And the fourth is, can we learn from things that have happened, our reflection on action? After some kind of interaction with another, think about what happened there. Was I happy? How did I feel? How did the other person feel? Did we achieve what we wanted to? As humans, we all have the agency to change and transform our communication, to make or co-create better social worlds that we live in, as long as we have curiosity and want to be vulnerable and open to the learning and allow ourselves to develop these new relationships with others.